Yes.
Okay, let's hear about your boy.
Okay, so I'll make a long story kind of short. I'm a nurse. I formerly worked ER for about 3 years. I was very pro-vaccine, getting into the nursing field all through nursing school. No one had ever told me otherwise. I was never taught anything other than the CDC vaccine schedule or how to administer the shot. That was all that we were ever taught in nursing school, or clinicals for that matter. So being very pro-vaccine, I followed the CDC schedule. I did everything recommended with both of my children, and things just started to not add up. Things started to not make sense. I saw so many kids come in the ER every day. Fevers, febrile seizures, vomiting, not eating, lethargic, some non-responsive, definitely the worst case scenario on all aspects. And I never put it together, even though I saw it every day. You know, one of the first questions that are asked whenever you enter the ER is, are your children vaccinated, you know, up to date? Are they missing any? Do you have them all? That's one of the very first things that is covered when a patient checks into the emergency room. And almost everyone always said yes. And a lot of them would then go on and say, well, that's kind of why we're here. We are up to date. We got our shots today, or his shots today. And now she's not eating, not sleeping, not drinking, won't breastfeed, very lethargic, has been screaming for 5 or 6 hours or 8 hours or 2 days or whatever the scenario may have been. There were so many different people. But I would say that I definitely encountered that almost on a daily basis that I worked. So I'm no longer in the ER anymore for just a job change. But when I was there, I did see that on a regular basis. And I did not ever put 2 and 2 together until things started happening with my son. At his 2-year-old shots, he, from infancy, from all shots, he had always had the lumps in his legs, the knots that wouldn't go down for days at a time, diagnosed with eczema very young. He had over 23 positive diagnosed cases of strep throat, back to back. Very, very sick little boy for being born very healthy. For me, eating healthy and exercising, not drinking or smoking during my pregnancy, doing everything the right way. He became very, very ill, and I didn't understand why. Was diagnosed with bronchitis, bronchiolitis. He got pertussis the same week as the shot, actually, and at the time, even being a nurse, still did not put 2 and 2 together. It literally was screaming in my face for me to pay attention, and I just did not catch it. But the one that really made me wake up and kind of start putting 2 and 2 together was the day that he got his 2-year-old shots. He could not walk for about 2 to 3 days afterwards. He was, every time he stood up, would fall back to the ground and would be walking and just kind of like drag his left leg where the shot was given.
What shots he had when he was
I have it all, like his vaccination record at home. I can't think of them off the top of my head. I know that MMR was one of them, but it was whatever's on the CDC 2-year recommendation for their shots at that time. So, and I believe he also got a flu shot that day, MMR, and 3 other ones. So
he didn't walk for 2 or 3 days?
He did not walk for about 2 to 3 days. Had a high fever. I took him into the ER where I worked at the time, and everyone said, oh, you know, it shouldn't have anything to do with the shot. It's probably just the swelling in his leg, but it's not necessarily a vaccine reaction. You know, it'll go away. They told me to massage it into his leg. They told me to give him Tylenol. This, you know, screaming and crying continued, the fussiness, the not eating, the not sleeping. And he did eventually come back around. He's later on over the years had a lot of sensory processing issues with just water, touching certain materials, kind of having, like, I guess, extra meltdowns that a 2 or 3-year-old child would have. He's now 3.5 and is functioning pretty well overall, but it really took a lot of him being majorly ill and repeatedly sick for me to understand that's what was happening. I pulled up all of his shot records as a nurse. I had to dissect all the information and question it and think, well, why does he keep getting strep? You know, how do you have it over 20 times at only 3 years old? How does that happen? I didn't understand it. And I started pulling out the vaccine inserts, and I saw where it had strep throat listed as a side effect. I saw that, you know, the fevers, and that if they have eczema and they're not supposed to be, you know, given shots any further. The day of his 2-year-old shots, he actually had 102 fever. And I, as a nurse and just as a person in general at the time, understood that if a child had a fever, that they were not to receive any vaccinations. And I asked my pediatrician on that day before giving him the shots, you know, she'd asked, so we're going to do the shots today. And I said, no, we'll have to make another appointment because he has a fever today. And she goes, oh, no, that's kind of an old story. You know, we're not doing that anymore. It's totally safe to get them. You know, she asked what I thought his fever was from, and I said that he had recently gotten over strep and had just been on antibiotics, and I don't think the antibiotics had worked, and that he still was carrying the fever. And she said it was okay and safe to vaccinate him anyways.
That is really
terrible.
Terrible.
Very terrible. That I learned later on, and it still
It might be worth
angers
chucking
me.
your report in.
Yeah, because I later found that out, you know, and I had thought that was the truth, that, you know, we didn't vaccinate if there was a fever. That's what I was told and taught. And when she looked at me and said, no, you know, we're not really following that anymore. It's okay. It's not that high of a fever. You know, don't worry about it, and did the shots anyway. So very concerning that a pediatrician would give that type of advice when a child's already sick and had just gotten over strep throat.
Money.
Yeah. And later on, you know, I had to ask myself why. Why would she say that, or why would they do that? But after learning about why, it makes more sense. You know, there's no other motivation for it. Because I was all about getting them. I said I was going to come back and make another appointment when he was no longer sick, when the fever had went away. So at the time, it wasn't even that I was trying to oppose them. I was willing to come back another day, but, you know, they were just very adamant about them being done, you know, right then on that visit.
Because your child has to have their shots on schedule for them to get their bonus.
Right. And
so
I didn't learn that until later.
Later, you're messing up their
Right.
bonus.
Right.
How is he doing now?
Good. I would say very well. I've done a lot of detoxing, worked heavily with a chiropractor, altered our diet, really changed a lot of things, eliminated a lot of things from his diet, and still has a lot of sensory processing issues. For the most part, interacts well with others and has, you know, adapted very well. I do see some concerning moments, but nothing to where I don't foresee him living a, you know, for the most part, normal life. But when I stopped vaccinating him, when I started the chiropractic care, when I started detoxing, when I changed his diet, he stopped getting sick and hasn't really been sick anymore.
So what do you think of your profession?
Ever since.
Nursing profession.
I think for a while I'm like, why did I do this? Because now I'm a nurse and I'm stuck in this field. But now I look at it as a platform to teach others and to educate. And, you know, everybody says, well, why do you want to be in that field after what's happened? And, you know, you knowing the truth now, how can you still work there?
Well, we are very proud of you, aren't we, Periscope?